In August of 1983, two bodies were discovered in Los Padres National Forest. 40 years later, those murders are still an unsolved mystery. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Marie Lilienberg and Maria Wahlen. Viewer discretion is advised. Marie Lilienberg was born on October 15th, 1959 in Täby, which is in Sweden. And then Maria Wahlen, she was born on November 6, 1957 in Sollentuna in Sweden. Maria and Marie, they had both moved to the States sometime, I guess, in the 80s. Or really, they both traveled there to stay for a very extended amount of time, to do a lot of traveling. But they didn't actually meet each other in Sweden. They actually met each other in Colorado. And this was in January of 1983. They were both working as maids at a ski resort in Vail, Colorado. And from there, the two of them became quick friends. And then they decided that they were going to travel the rest of the country together. For Marie Lilienberg, she had actually been to the United States on several different occasions. But for Maria Wahlen, this was her first time ever coming to the States. Both of them were, since they're from Sweden, and Sweden is, at least back then, had a population of about 7 or 8 million people. And then here in the United States, back then, you're talking a few 100 million people. And Sweden, both girls were used to everyone being very trusting, everyone being very welcoming, everyone being very, it was always like a safe place to be, in Sweden during that time. So when they both traveled here, their mentality was, well, if it's safe there, then it's got to be safe, here. They were both told by many people in Sweden, because now the girls didn't have their own transportation in the States. So they relied heavily on hitchhiking. But before they both came here, people in Sweden said, we don't recommend you do hitchhiking. Hitchhiking can be very dangerous. And then even interacting with people here in the States, because hitchhiking obviously was very popular, especially in the 60s and 70s. But it also became very unpopular towards the end of the 70s when several people, mainly women, were, killed after hitchhiking or sexually assaulted, or a crime took place against these women, during the process of hitchhiking. So even people in the States that both these girls interacted with were like, we really don't recommend you hitchhike. But they did anyway. After Colorado, the two of them actually went to Hawaii and spent a little bit of time there. And then after Hawaii, the plan was for them to fly back to California, and they were going to go down the California coast and do a lot of sightseeing and tourist stuff. And it was in California where they became very reliant on hitchhiking. It was reported later on that the girls only had like $50 left between the two of them by the time they were in California. So they couldn't even afford like public transportation if they wanted to. Both girls were last seen on July 22nd, 1983. This was in Redwood City. They had gone to visit a friend of theirs that they had met some time back, and they just wanted to visit that friend. The girls told the friend, we're going to hitchhike back down to Los Angeles, and then from there, they had to then take a flight back to New York, and then from New York, they were going to go back, I think to Connecticut first, actually, is what their plan was, to visit some friends, and then they were going to fly back home to Sweden. But on July 24th, 1983, everything changed. July 24th, 1983 was supposed to be the day they flew from Los Angeles to New York, but they never got on their flights. On that same day, a man who worked at a local gas station in Commerce City, California, which is a part of Los Angeles, well, he was throwing stuff away in the dumpster behind the gas station, and when he looked in, he noticed something kind of strange. There were two very new-looking backpacks in there. And then, just out of curiosity, he looked in the backpacks, and there were clothing, there was diaries, there was rolls of film, undeveloped. There were passports, there were wallets. When they opened up the passport and the wallets to see the IDs, those backpacks were shown to belong to 23-year-old Marie Lilienberg and 25-year-old Maria Wahlen. So the local authorities were told about these backpacks, and then I believe they went to, or they informed the Swedish consulate, and that's how they kind of got in touch with the family back in Sweden to ask them, hey, have you heard or seen from them, the girls? Both of their families were like, no, they were supposed to be in New York during this certain time, but then when the family looked into it, that's when they realized, well, they never even got on their flights. And so the fathers of both the girls would fly to California, and they began to work closely with the local authorities. They went on the news, and they put out a plea to the public. Please, if you've seen our daughters, if you know anything, please come forward, because they're missing. Like, they have not been seen. That being said, there were apparently, once all this kind of broke on the news, there were like 20, 30 people who came forward to say, oh, we've seen them since they went missing. But then looking into each one of those witness statements, all of it turned out to be just not true. There were different people they saw. Marie's father was like, this is unusual. Like, you know, Marie would never back out of plans. She would never just abandon anything, and she would never do anything without telling us first. So they knew something was wrong. They knew something bad had happened. And then on August 18th, 1983, about 25 miles east of Santa Barbara County at the Los Padres National Forest, two hunters were in the area, and they discovered an arm bone first. It was a skeletonized arm bone. By the way, most of the photos I'm showing in this video are going to be recreations from the show Unsolved Mysteries, and then some obviously are real photos, but you should be able to tell the difference between the two of them. The arm bone, where it was located, it was just sort of like in this open kind of dirt patch, and they came to the conclusion, these two hunters, that, you know, an animal probably dragged this out, and so they kind of went further, and then that's when they noticed a nude, very decomposed body of what they thought was a female. And then they looked a few feet over underneath some brush. There was another nude, decomposed body of another female. And so they alerted police. Near the bodies, there were some pieces of jewelry, which were identical pieces of jewelry that both girls' family members would identify as belonging to the two missing girls. And then because the bodies were so decomposed, they couldn't get a good visual on them, so they had to use dental records, which the families would provide from Sweden, and the bodies were confirmed to be that of Marie Lilienberg and her friend Maria Wahlen. The autopsy showed that both girls were sexually assaulted. There were indications that there were attempts to strangle both of them, but ultimately the cause of death was that both of them were stabbed multiple times each. The families, would tell police that they had warned the girls about hitchhiking, and as police were investigating, they discovered that the girls were in fact hitchhiking. The family said both sides of the families, they said they last heard from either one of them on July 16th, 1983. In one of the backpacks, there was diaries, and the last diary entry was for July 21st, 1983. And then the following morning from that diary entry, July 22nd, was the last time they were physically seen from. So they know that this murder took place between July 22nd and obviously August 13th, but obviously probably sometime way before August 13th, since the bodies had been in a state of some pretty serious decomposition. They figured that the girls were probably taken on that July 22nd, and then given the fact that their items were found in a dumpster on July 24th, that's the time frame they came to, is sometime between July 22nd and July 24th is when these two girls were taken and murdered. The undeveloped rolls of film that were found in one of the backpacks, they developed them, and for the most part, it was really just photos of the girls together, or just a single shot of them, or it was just like tourist type shots of landscapes and whatnot. So they didn't really bring forth any new solid evidence. The diary entries had no mention of any kind of nefarious people in the girls' lives at that time, made no mention of anyone they were like dating or, you know, anything like that. There was no mention that the girls were afraid of anyone or even mentioning anyone, really. When the news broke that the bodies were found and that they were identified, a truck driver came forward to police. His name was Mark Hansen, and he was from San Diego, California. He said he actually gave the girls a ride at one point, and he remembered them very well. He told the girls, like, you know, you really need to avoid hitchhiking, especially with, like, normal pedestrian cars on the road, because it's been proven to be unsafe here in the States. But he said that both girls came off as still being very trusting. One of the girls, I guess, had a knife, and she felt like the knife would help protect them. He had seen them or picked them up in San Diego. He drove them to Compton, California. And then he, at the truck stop in Compton, he set them up with another truck driver he knew that he felt would be safe. And that truck driver drove the girls from Compton to the Oakland, California area. So it's just kind of crazy. Like, you have, and then, you know, from there, you have their belongings being found in the city of Commerce, California. Their bodies are found a little east of Santa Barbara, California. They were last seen alive in Redwood City, California. And so it's very hard to, like, navigate or really understand where they may have been picked up from by their killer. Like, it was just really hard to know. But they talked to both of these truck drivers, and police were able to verify that these two truck drivers could not have possibly done anything to these girls, and both of them were completely cleared of any wrongdoing. But from there, the case just went cold, and they got nothing. There was no tips, no anything. It just whoever did this just seemed to completely fall off the radar. And this was the case for about 8 years, until September 26th, 1991. The Swedish consulate in San Diego received an anonymous phone call from a man. This anonymous man said he knew another man named Loren. Loren, he said he thought was from Canada, but he wasn't sure. This Loren person had told the anonymous caller about these two Swedish girls he once picked up. Loren said that he would drive, I guess, down the California coast to go to San Diego and eventually to Mexico. So in the time frame of when this anonymous caller said this Loren person did that was the exact time frame the girls were murdered. But anyway, he said Loren said that he met these two Swedish girls and that they tried to con him. He said Loren was someone who was very anti-women. He really hated women for whatever reason. I don't really know why. The caller also knew the type of van Loren drove. It was a big white van, kind of your typical 1980s, 1990s Predator-style van with a green canoe on the top of it. The caller said Loren was about 6 foot tall, like a slight build, 175 pounds, thinning hair, a long pointed nose, and protruding watery eyes. Whatever that means. So the authorities look into this phone call. They believe wholeheartedly that the call was real, that the person was truly identifying a possible suspect. But they didn't know who the caller was. The caller never identified themselves. And he never gave a last name to this Loren person, and so they weren't really able to investigate much further. They tried to track down vans that looked like that. They put out, like, news pressers, like, hey, if you've seen a van like this that maybe has a green canoe on top, but no one ever came forward. And then again, the case just sort of went cold. That's when Unsolved Mysteries would air the case on April 8th, 1992. When the episode aired, police started getting some more tips. From there, they were able to get the anonymous caller to call back, and the police were able to then identify the caller, whose identity has not been released to the public. And through all of this, with more descriptions from him about this Loren man, police were able to identify this man, Loren. It even got to a point where they were able to obtain a warrant to search this Loren individual's apartment. And they even found evidence in this man's apartment that may suggest this person may be guilty of the murders. However, the evidence wasn't enough. It wasn't really solid evidence. It was more just kind of potential evidence, circumstantial type evidence, right? And so they were never able to actually press charges against this individual. And from there, it's kind of unknown what happened to him. Nothing's ever more has come out about this guy. There is rumors that Loren may be a man named Loren Herzog. Loren Herzog was a part of a little duo known as the Speed Freak Killers. Loren Herzog and Wesley Shermantine, the two of them they can confirm that they combined to murder 4 people together, but there is a possibility they've killed up to 20 people. They did so in California, in all the right areas that would line up with these two girls. The crimes that they can confirm were between 1984 and 1998. The 2 girls were killed in 1983. So it's very possible that Marie and Maria were actually their first 2 victims before their killing spree. But it isn't confirmed. Really, that's more of just speculation. Both men were convicted, and one of them got the death sentence. One of them got like 70, 80 years, which was then overturned, and it got switched to like 15 years, something like that. And Loren Herzog ended his own life in 2012, and then Wesley Shermantine is still awaiting his execution. But again, it's not even confirmed that they are even suspects. This was merely speculation on other people's behalf. This Loren person, if it's someone different, police did look into them. They claim they had evidence, but nothing ever was done about it. So maybe they just either cleared him or they didn't have enough evidence to say for sure that he did it. But that's where it stands, unfortunately. Both girls have not received justice. Whoever killed them, if it wasn't the Speed Freak Killers, very possible that it wasn't, they got away with it. At least for now. But it's also very possible that the killer who did this to them, who, if it isn't the Speed Freak Killers, is still out there and is still alive. More than likely, there's a very good chance that whoever did do this, if not the Speed Freak Killers, are still also serial killers on their own. A lot of unknowns, however, about this story, unfortunately. Someone, somewhere out there, knows the truth. And perhaps that someone is you. And if you have any information about the murders of Marie Lilienberg and Maria Wahlen, please contact the Santa Barbara Police Department, and you can always report any information you have anonymously. And perhaps you can give these families some closure and the answers they deserve. Do not let Marie and Maria's murders go unsolved. But that is it for this case, True Crime Maroonies. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you are seeing me for the very first time, if you have tripped, fallen, and stumbled your way into this video, hello, I'm Mike. I tell true crime stories here on YouTube, and also you can find me over on TikTok, where I tell multiple stories as well throughout the week. So please subscribe to me here, give this video a like so more people can see it, share it if you want to, and then you can go to my Linktree and you can follow my other socials if you so choose. If there's a case you would like me to cover, please email me. The email is listed below. Just email me the name of the person, where it happened, when it happened, and then I will add it to my list eventually. I choose the cases I pick at random. I will cover the ones you want me to eventually. I just can't tell you when. There's like 4,700 names on the list, so it may be a while. If you would like to support me in any way, we do sell merch, we do ship internationally, and that is also linked in the link tree in the description below. And then if you are on Discord and you want to join my Discord server, also in the link tree below, but be over the age of 18 or else you will be removed. Please and thank you. All right, let's finish the video with the chuckle, with another dad joke from Live, Laugh, Lose. And I have to do it in... Read the joke while growling the words. Okay. Ugh. Why is pirating... Sorry. I don't know what that was. Growling. Why is pirating addictive? Sound like Batman. Why is pirating addictive? Because once you lose your first hand, you get hooked. Didn't say it was going to be a winner. Always ends on a good note, Mike. Always ends on a good note.